Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
no, okay.
I found someone new now. I have more room, no more formats to chain me. On the same page, we are effortless, schemaless, living in the future, you and me, made for us, serverless, living in the future of the clouds.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I want to make sure that you hear two voices clearly and no more than two voices. So this is Rags. Stefano, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. This is Stefano. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Please give us a thumbs up if you can hear us so we can start.
Let's wait for a couple of thumbs up before we get started.
Yeah. In the meantime, Rags, I would like to ask you to make ourselves a bit
Yes,
smaller
it'll be.
on the screen because looks like we are covering the valuable content. There we
Yeah,
are.
that was
Thanks.
just something I added to make sure that the audio is okay and things like that. But again, welcome.
Nice.
I know I've been on a
Okay.
hiatus for a few weeks, but I'm really, really looking forward to do this because we really enjoy doing this. And, whatever level you are, the idea is to up your game a little bit. And we have a lot of material to cover. So I'm going to keep my intro short and hand it over to Stefano. Stefano, go ahead.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Stefano, but let's introduce ourselves with our slides. I'm a developer advocate at DataStax, interested in distributed systems, which means many times the database. Indeed, I love the database Apache Cassandra, and yeah, I like to communicate and to teach. So this is me, Rax. What about you?
Yeah, me too. I'm a developer and architect as well. One of the passions that you and I share is distributed systems, and we love to teach and communicate. In addition, I was a mechanical engineer by education, and the closest you can see things move in software engineering is code, right? So we're going to see a lot of code and movement today, right? We're going to see a lot of platforms, and the instructions are pretty self-explanatory. So even it doesn't matter what level you are in. If you're falling behind or if you want to go ahead, the instructions are there. But what we're going to do in this workshop, is take the course of, you don't have to install anything. We will have this all done using Gitpod, Visual IDE, based on VS Code, and you'll see all that today. So I can't wait to get into action and see the code move.
Yeah, so let's go on. Today you are seeing the two of us, but we are a whole team. And so I want to acknowledge the help and the support of the whole team at Developer Advocates at DataStax. Today, special mention to Anya Kubo, who I see is in the chat. So hi, Anya, thanks for being here. Actually, most of the content, let's say the front end and the coding part of the content you see today was born in a collaboration with her. She's a wonderful coder and influencer and developer. So hi. You might find something familiar in what you see today. Let's see. Okay, so let's start. First, a bit of practical information. So how to get the most out of this workshop. You are seeing us live on YouTube, and that's one thing. In case ever YouTube has trouble, which happens very rarely, we have a fallback channel on Twitch. We will give you instructions if that happens. We hope it doesn't. That's one thing. The other thing is that we want this to be very interactive. So besides the YouTube chat, and you already see there is quite a lot going on in the chat for your questions, support, whatever. we also have a Discord server. That's because once this live is over, the chat will stop, but the Discord server will go on, and there we have a community, and we can keep the discussion going on, helping you and whatever you can think of. By the way, many of you have already asked that. This workshop is being recorded and will be available even after it ends. So that's one thing.
So,
Okay,
Stefano,
that's not the
just
end of it.
one interjection
Yes.
there. Occasionally, we also answer questions that are on chat, like this, right? Basically, we answer it so that it's beneficial to everyone. I don't know if it's Kyle or Kylie. One of you asked the question whether it's applicable to beginners. Absolutely. If you're a beginner, you can get started.
Yes,
We'll also point you at some material where you may want, for example, if you want to look at GraphQL, there are a number of different technologies we talk about, and it's impossible to do service in 2 hours. So we will leave you with more resources that you can kind of follow up, call for actions, and so on. So a lot of our attendees are at different levels, but if you're a beginner, not to worry. Just try to follow along as to the best level you can.
Yeah, in a sense, the level of detail you can go to is a bit up to you, let's say. So I'm coming to this in a second. That's, I was saying, is not the end of the interactivity, because we will have also some games and quizzes during the workshop. We will ask you a few questions with the Mentimeter platform, and there will be also a final quiz to test your understanding, but most important, to give you some prizes. So stay tuned. Okay, so material for today. One thing I want to stress is that you can follow and do all the hands-on without installing anything on your computer, because you can do everything in your browser, actually. So we have GitHub that provides the source code, the instructions, and the exercises and everything. Then we will use an IDE in the cloud in your browser, which is Gitbot. We will use a database because that's a real application backed by a real data store. And the database is, again, something in the cloud, which is AstraDB. You will see in a moment. And then for the final step of deploying to production, again, you will be able to do everything from the browser and deploy to Netlify. I've seen questions about whether one can also work locally, which means instead of using Gitbot, using your own IDE in your own machine. Of course you can. You can use any IDE, even a text editor if you want, but we will not be able to provide live support because every computer is different and we don't have so much time. So we rely on Gitbot that provides a uniform platform, which we know works in all these details for today's application. Well, another thing I want to mention is we issue badges. So if you want to prove that you attended this workshop and that you learned something, we will be happy to give you a badge of attendance, a verified badge. Of course, it's not enough just to follow the workshop. You will have to do a bit of an assignment, but nothing so complicated, but just to enforce your learning.
And seriously, we actually grade this. We don't make it very hard. We're not a hard grader, but we definitely grade them. So it's in your own interest to take it a little bit more seriously, right?
Yeah, well, we will give more detailed instructions by the end. Don't worry. Another point, and that's a bit of an answer to a question that was there a little ago. You can actually choose what kind of involvement and difficulty level, so to speak. You can just watch what happens because we will do a lot of hands-on and actually we will demo everything on screen. You can also do that yourself, which is what we encourage. And if you really feel like adventurous, you can run locally instead of on Gitbot, as I mentioned. So that's really up to you. Okay, so I think it's time, Rux, to do a bit of quiz to get to know our audience a bit better.
Okay.
What do you think?
Let's see. What is a data stacks dev workshop without Menti, right? Yes, absolutely. Let's switch to that. So let me go small here, and I'm going to start the quiz music. Let me know if it's too loud. I can always bring it down a little bit. Let me start low anyway. And then, yeah.
Okay, so Okay, so I ask you to please join menti.com and enter the code that you see in the chat and also at the top of the screen.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
You
Maybe
should be able
I'm
to
showing the wrong
join-
screen. Just give me a second.
Yes,
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
you are on your screen. Yeah, that's more, okay, that's more like it, sure. Okay, so go to menti.com with your phone maybe, or with a tab on your browser and enter the code you see here. I see people are joining already, but you are more than 300, so I want to see the number grow. Just one thing, we will be asking you questions. Now, these first questions at the beginning are just for us to, get to know our audience a little better. So no hurry, no pressure, but we will use this very same platform for the quiz at the end. And there you will need to be on time. You will need to be fast in answering and correct.
So take this as kind of
that's why
take this as a preview for where you can win swag. So don't answer in chat, but answer in Menti.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So do not answer in the YouTube chat, please, because that would be a wasted answer. And look at your screen and not at YouTube for the questions, because there is a little delay. So you would be at a disadvantage when it comes to the quiz. Okay. So let's start with the questions, and you can keep joining and stay joined until the end of the workshop, so you will be ready for the quiz. Okay. So
we only have like 100 plus. We gotta get to at least 200, right?
yeah, I think.
All right, keep going. Yeah.
I think you will be joining along the way. So I will push the code once more. Here we'll ask our good old Nightbot to give the code once more. Okay, so a few questions to know you better. First question: where are you from? So please.
It's so exciting to see the dots pop up already.
Yeah. It's cool because we are really reaching everywhere with these workshops. And I see lots of people from the States, Europe,
It's very close. Any
Germany,
of the
France,
continents could win right now.
India,
looks like it's a tie.
Africa.
Oh, wow. This is amazing.
South America, Scandinavia, everywhere. Wow, greetings.
Couple from South America.
Cool.
I don't know. I'm trying to look at any dot.
Is that what Angola maybe?
Could be. I'm not sure. I'm not good at this.
Africa, South Sudan. Sorry. Yes. Great.
South Sudan.
Someone is also at the border of the universe. That's great to see. Okay.
Yeah, border of the universe. I like that. I like that.
Don't fall out.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about the one
people from all over.
On top of Australia, kind of like west of Australia? Is that Indonesia or something? Yeah, but keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's keep going. And thank you for the answer. Now, how much experience do you have with GraphQL? Complete beginner, comfortable, expert? Nobody created GraphQL here. Come on, guys. Comfortable and expert? Complete beginner. That's great. So, yeah, okay, that's cool.
I mean, this is kind of what we expected, right? Mostly, learning GraphQL, and you've chosen a perfect workshop, perfect technology to learn. Because I think GraphQL is going to be. I mean, the trajectory is just going up.
It's growing.
It's just going up. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Today we will see some of the reasons why, and maybe I can already anticipate there will be another workshop even more focused on GraphQL, but we will give out the detail later. So, are you familiar with React? Many are. I see many yes. That's good. You probably know already that the front end is built with React for today's application. So that might be okay, but many also say no, that's not a problem. Indeed, today we are not going to focus on how the client code is written so much. We will look at it, time permitting, but there will be other more infrastructural points we are focusing on. So don't worry if you are not familiar with React. But I already can anticipate that in the GitHub repo, the instructions go a bit more in detail, and not only in explaining some more details on the architecture of the client, but also pointing to a very excellent video where nothing less than Anya Kubo herself builds the application from scratch. So, okay. So I will keep this closed for the quiz. Thank you for answering and for giving us a bit of information on you. And let me go back to the presentation. Okay, so yeah, I think this is time to start with the real thing. Let's start with the overall architecture of today's application. So yeah, this is the typical, let's say, the standard architecture of a full stack web application, right? So you have browsers, whatever, a mobile or a browser in your computer, whatever, and they display the front end. They display web pages that are usually a front end that is files, static files that get to the browser, and there is code, JavaScript code that is run on your browser. This part speaks to a backend, to an API, that is usually running on your server, on some server out there in the internet. This API runs on one side, receives requests from the front end, and on the other side speaks usually to a database, because the API in turn communicate with a data store, which is hosted on some other machines running somewhere else on the internet, let's say. This is the typical full stack application. Right, so this has been like that since humanity discovered fire, more or less. Right?
Yeah,
That's more or
I would
less
say so. You know, I mean, for those of you who are watching me, you know, you can see a lot of gray hair on me, and you know, things have evolved quite a bit. But you might have heard of the standard three-tier architecture, where you know the backend is kind of specialized for that application. But the difference here is that you serve the backend using an API, a REST API, or it could be a gRPC or some other API, so that even if you're communicating from another program, you could still do that. So let's say you take away the user interface and substitute another program that could be your customers or could be your partners or something else, right? It still works, you know, kind of the same way. And that is kind of how you're evolving towards more of a services based, microservices kind of based approach. In a traditional three-tier architecture, the backend API was kind of tailored for just that application and not really, you know, open to the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, so thank you, Rans. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you one thing. Today, we are going to do things a little differently. So we will have a database, of course, and in the database itself, we'll have an API layer to, let's say, to make it easier to speak to it in different languages, in different protocols, I should say. But our application will be a user interface plus a thin layer of API, which we consider part of the application. Let me be more precise on here on this. So the application, we will consider the application as composed by the user interface, which is the client proper, and a bunch of serverless functions, which will serve the purpose of being APIs. So small APIs that are made available to the user interface, to the client, but not by us. So we will try to forget about having to run servers, basically. What do I mean? The user interface is code written in React, so it is built and it is served as static files, possibly by the help of a CDN, so not by us actually. A CDN that takes care of distributing these static files, and also the same infrastructure will take care of making serverless functions running and available to the user interface for calls. This is the essence of the Jamstack. So Jamstack, I think Jam stands for JavaScript, API, and markup. So JavaScript and markup will make for the actual client part. And the API is a bunch of functions that you don't need to deploy on your servers. You don't need to have any server. They are just taken care of by an infrastructure for you in a serverless way. So you don't have to worry about the infrastructure. And they will just be running for you by under the care of someone else. What is this someone else? Well, today in our case, it's going to be Netlify. And this is actually a JavaScript code, Node code that is run for you in a Node environment. you don't have to worry about it. So that's more or less the essence of it.
Yeah, and I think the critical part of the Jamstack is, again, in today's day and world, if you're writing an internal application or whether you're writing an application like, like a Meta or whatever, that's consumed by millions of users, you really want quick response, and that static pages are rendered faster, but the Jamstack kind of combines the best of both worlds of markup and APIs and kind of provides a static interface, if you will, so that it's much faster, and you'll see all of that in action today.
Yeah, then there are all the advantages of CI/CD provided by Netlify, connection with your GitHub repo. I mean, additional things. But the essence of it is, having not to worry about any server yourself. And okay. So let me spend a few minutes about database, because we will start building the application from the right-hand side, so from the database layer, because we need a place to store the data. Today, we're going to run a Netflix clone, so a clone of the main Netflix landing page, basically. And we need a database to store data about movies and movie genres, right? So let me speak about Apache Cassandra. That's a very powerful distributed database. I will not go into detail, but just mention that this database is made for big data, is made for scaling to very big amounts of data, and it is made to be distributed. So there is no master node and other nodes, but every node is the same, which makes it a very resilient database. So every node can go down and you will have high availability. That's because data is replicated and distributed. So every table is split across every node that makes up your database. That's my 20 seconds on Cassandra. Now, what happens is that Cassandra is wrapped up into something called AstraDB, which is a database as a service built on Apache Cassandra. And around this Cassandra, a lot of additional things are built. Now, there is, as you can see, a lot of things indeed. But what we are focused on today is that there is a layer called Stargate that offers various different ways to access your Cassandra data other than just its own native protocol. You see here highlighted in orange that on top of the Cassandra embedded into AstraDB, Stargate makes it possible to natively speak to the data, so read, write data, and so on, with the GraphQL API, which is what we are going to use today. So that's great.
But again, I think you kind of definitely alluded to this, but as developers, we each have our own style, right? GraphQL is cool, but I may just be happy with REST. I may just be happy with SQL. And I think one of the cool things about Stargate is it unifies all these APIs and provides you with the different endpoints, and you will see endpoints today in action. Provides GraphQL, SQL, gRPC, document API. It's so depending on what you like, you can pick any one of those. And for those of you again, who may be thinking this is like overwhelming to me, it doesn't matter. Today we're going to use GraphQL and we're going to stick to GraphQL. Okay, but if you want something else, there are a bunch of other workshops that kind of go through that.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'll try to spend no more than 2 minutes on data modeling, which is a fascinating, very deep topic for databases and for Cassandra in particular.
We can talk about it for 2 weeks, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, indeed, we have several workshops on that, and you are invited to watch them if you're curious. But basically, today we're going to store two kinds of data in our database: a list of movie genres and a list of movies with their data, so duration, title, whatever. But my point is that when you plan for the shape of your tables in Cassandra, you start by looking at the application. And the application today needs two things. One is, tell me all movie genres, or tell me a chunk of the list of movie genres. And the other is, tell me movies for this genre. So tell me the movies of comedy, for example, or musical. These are the two kind of queries that we will have to send to the GraphQL layer on top of the database. And this leads to planning. Oh, what happened? I think something terrible happened. Okay. Sorry. A green
I thought it was
invasion.
me.
No, it was me. Sorry. So this leads to designing two tables. One is called reference list, and the other is called movies by genre. These are just usual ordinary database tables, except besides the concept of primary key, which defines uniqueness of rows, so which rows are distinct from the others. There is also the concept of partition key. So you see here, only in the movies by genre, every movie is uniquely identified by genre, year, and title, but only genre defines the partitioning. This is not so important for us today, except for one thing. Since genre is the only partitioning, that means that all comedies are stored on the same machine in the Cassandra database. That has a consequence that is very important. That is, if I want to get all comedies, it will be fast because I will have to reach a single node, single machine that will have all the data. Okay, that's a side remark for today, but
And the nice thing is it's
do a workshop without mentioning.
yeah, and the nice thing it's ordered by year and title, right? I think year descending in title, ascending or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you see here quickly an example of the kind of data we are going to store in the database and the kind of data that will be later needed by the application. So nothing surprising here. All genres are grouped under the labeling genre because this reference list might be potentially very general. And the movies are grouped by genre, ordered by year and title, and they will have other fields. So this is what we need for the client, for the application. So this is just a quick mention. Let me move forward. Okay, so now we want you to start doing hands-on stuff. And the first step is you create your database. So you're going to create your own database in AstraDB, which is based on Cassandra again. And to do that, Rax will show you how to do that. And it all starts from a nice button in our GitHub repository, which I will, so the URL I will give you again in the chat. There is a button called Create AstraDB, and I think Rax will guide you through all the details right now.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna.
First step is create the database and create an authentication token for the database.
So before we do all that, I hope you can see my screen, and I'm going to try to increase the font a little bit, see if it's a little bit better. Okay, and you can see here what I do typically is I start with this GitHub URL, right? And the instructions are pretty self-explanatory here. You know, it kind of talks about what are the things you need, how do I submit my homework and get my badge, which is great to put in on your LinkedIn profile. I've heard, your paychecks can go up because of that, but don't quote me on that. And then, basically follow step by step, right? So the first thing we're going to do is log in or register to AstraDB and create a database, right? So for those of you who are already registered, you may want to create this database name in Keyspace and make sure it's up and running. But for those of you who have not, what you can do is, I'm going to show you how to create this pretty much from scratch. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to sign up. Okay, I've signed up already, so I'm not going to go through the process. It may ask you a few questions and so on, but essentially you put in your email. No credit card. Sorry, password required. Yeah, no credit card, which is really really cool, and it gives you like a $25 per month credit, which you can use it for pretty sophisticated production workloads actually. So with 25 you can do quite a bit, and I know there is a code that you can use to redeem and get a little bit more if you want. But this is good enough for me, so I've already created this, so I'm going to just sign in. Okay, let's sign in again. All right, pretty straightforward. Okay, and I'm just going to walk you through how this kind of looks. I have this dashboard. If you click on top, it'll kind of give you what are all the different different databases I have. I have something called as K1 fruits, workshops, and workshops. I have 2 workshops, which is interesting, but we'll take a look at this.
Right.
And essentially what I do is follow along with the steps, right? What does this say? Database is workshop and key space is Netflix, right? So I'm going to go here. Okay, and I'm going to create a database. That's it, as simple as that, right? I'm going to put in workshops. Is it workshop or workshops? Again, you can go back, right? Just make sure. I'm doing it like most of you would do. Workshops. Only I can spell it. Okay, Netflix, right? And then you can pick. Mostly Google Cloud regions are available. So I have like 3 available here, like US East, US West, US East in Ohio, Virginia, Ohio. You can pick any of the 3. I don't think there are regions that are available in Asia, but you can try it. If it's available, you can pick that. But if you try, like, for example, Amazon Web Services, they may not be available. But if you are, for whatever reason, you want only one particular cloud, you can pick that as well. There are ways of doing that. But let's say Google Cloud, and I can pick any region, and then just hit the create database. Okay. So once you hit the create database, it's going to go into a pending state, and then it's going to go back. It's going to go into a created state. So let me go back to because I'm not going to go through this because it takes like 2 minutes. So it's not really required for me to do that. When you go back to the dashboard, you see all the different databases here, right? So what I can do is I can click on this, and you will see all the key spaces. I've already created a key space called Netflix, right? So I'm good to go, and you can see that this is online. Initially, it might be pending. But what I would suggest is, should we wait a little bit for people to create the database? Which reminds me, I should probably take off my heads, which is right in the middle of everything. So let's see if I can do this. All right, so that's much better.
Well, so
let's go ahead and create the database, and I'll talk in a moment about how we can create a security token. If you
while we wait for the databases to
all right,
while we wait for folks to create their database, maybe we can wait a minute
yeah,
or so
just wait
here.
like half a minute. Yeah. That's good.
Someone, okay, great. I see some of our,
Yeah, so the question is,
okay, they be created.
yeah,
Great.
should I create, which region should I pick? Just pick the region which is free, right? Again, if you want a particular region, you want particular cloud, you can do that. Okay, so
Yeah, you should stick to GCP, if I'm
Correct.
not mistaken, because the free tier starts with only GCP unlocked, and then you can unlock other regions for free. But today, maybe to go straight to using the database, you should stick to GCP, and there are a few of the regions that are unlocked for you from the start.
nice. I can see that Nayan Brahmain create one in Mumbai region. So yeah, if you can, all power to you.
Okay, great.
Ideally, yeah, if you can
Okay.
create something closer to where you are or where the users are going to be, I think that'll be ideal, right? So the next step, I think this is not going to be a problem, right, for our wonderful audience to create this. So what we're going to do next is create a token, because we want to have secure access to the database, right? And to be able to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go into your current organization, okay, and you pick on organization settings, okay, and then you click on token management, and then you can really fine tune this role. As they say in security, it's the principle of least privilege. You want to give the least privilege that is needed, but we just make it easy for ourselves and just click the database administrator. Okay, and all that you're going to do is you're going to create the generate token here. Okay, so let's create the generate token, and notice what happens after you create the generate token. You will get these values: the client ID, the client secret, and the token. So if for some reason you navigate away from this page, this is going to be lost. But not to worry, because you can always create a new one. But my suggestion would be just download this token details. And really, all that we need today is this ASTRA token, which starts with ASTRA CS : right? So, just copy this and keep it in a safe place. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I can either download the token details, right? And, I can open that file, right? I could do that. Or what I could do is I could just take the token, okay, and put it in somewhere safe. Okay, so typically what I do is I put it in my notes, and I say token, and just paste it. Okay, so I'm going to delete this anyway, but that's the way to work with it. Okay, so again, if you navigate away from the page, not a big deal. You can always get it back, or get a new one back. Or get a new one, not a new one back.
So
yeah, go ahead, Stefano. Yeah.
Rags, maybe if I may, maybe you can show once more very quickly how to get to generating the token, just how to get it from the main Astra dashboard, because I see someone.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah,
got a
let
bit,
me go back again
lost.
in case I was a little too fast.
So
you just click on the Astra dashboard. Okay, and again you'll see the same dashboard, with all the workshop. With all the databases and all that, right? And then you can create tokens for the organization. So click on the current organization, which will be your email or whatever you have set up there, right? And then you say organization settings, okay, and then say token management, okay, and then pick the role. I just pick database administrator because it's easy, and then hit on generate token. As simple as that. All right, let's see some thumbs up for people who have generated the token, and make sure again, to kind of store it in a safe place. You don't want to expose this to outside, because it's really your security token, but at the same time you want to have ready access to it. Very cool. I see a lot of thumbs up. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, there we are. Okay, great.
All right.
So yeah, the token is important. Otherwise, your database will not let you speak
exactly.
to it, of course. No authentication. I see a lot of thumbs up, so I think we can jump back to a bit of theory, and then back to the second part of the practice. Thank you, Rags. I see my screen again. Okay.
So there is somebody with a thumbs down. I don't know if that's a typo, whatever. Sinredrun, there are people who are hanging out in the chat who are willing to help you. So just let them know what the problem is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is also the chat on Discord, and we are trying to have a look at that as well. I see Aaron, and I myself also tried to be there. So you're even more. So
we really
we are also
like Joe. We really don't want to see any thumbs down. So if there is any issues, please let us know what the issue is. Just rather than just putting a thumbs up there, thumbs down there. Yeah.
Yeah. So someone is still having the database in pending state. Yeah, that can take a bit longer sometimes. Consider today we are a lot of people creating a database all at once. So this is a bit of a peak of activity. So that might mean a few more minutes to wait. So maybe you can wait a bit more, and otherwise we can go ahead and you can jump back on the recording. Absolutely. As a last.
Yeah, Emmanuel is asking,
Sorry?
Should we only have to copy the token? Yes, either copy the token, just keep the token handy.
Keep the token handy for later. The token Yeah, in particular, the token proper is the one starting with ASTRA CS colon blah 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 blah. So keep that handy for later, and later is very very soon actually. Okay, so a bit of information on GraphQL. So the application will be speaking to the database, and so far you've been setting up the database and creating it, but there is nothing in it yet, not even the table. So you will have to create table and put data in there, and also maybe experiment a bit with GraphQL to see it working even before using it in your application. So fortunately, luckily for you, as I said, the AstraDB database comes with a layer called Stargate, and that offers not only a GraphQL API to actually interact with the data, but also a nice web application called GraphQL Playground to play, to experiment and explore the GraphQL queries, run them and see the result, and maybe craft them properly before using them in your application, for example. But what is GraphQL? Of course, this is a question, and today is a central question. So GraphQL is a specification, is a different philosophy for an API, different from the usual REST API. So GraphQL is now turning 10 years this year, by the way. So it has been created by Facebook initially for internal use. Then it started gaining popularity, it became a buzzword for some time. Then it was open source, and it really started to take off when GitHub announced using that. And after GitHub, also other big companies started promoting and praising the ease of use and power of GraphQL in general. So what is GraphQL? Well, it is an API, query language, and server-side runtime. It is also, I would say, a specification for a server-side API. And the main point, the main philosophy of GraphQL is let's give clients just what they ask for, not more. And hopefully, let's make it so that clients need to make as few calls as possible to the server. That's more or less the gist, right? Okay, so maybe an example would make it easier. So a premise is that GraphQL works after specification of a schema. So there is no schemaless GraphQL. Schema is really a central point. And that's something that lives in the server, in the API server, which, by the way, also publishes and actively irradiates information on the schema of the data that it is able to operate on. So in this example, there is something called project, that is something that defines an object of type project. So this is called, this is a GraphQL schema definition language, and it is used to communicate that this API is able to deal with objects of type project, and this object, at each project has fields which are name, that is a string, tagline, that is another string, and contributors, that is an array of objects of type user. That means that probably somewhere else outside of this screenshot, the schema continues and defines what a user is in turn. So once this is well published and made available to clients, the client, whoever can hit the server with a request, will send a request like the one you see in the middle of this screenshot. So this is a GQL, so GraphQL query language. And it is just a way to ask the server, please fetch the project whose name is GraphQL, but of this object, just give me the tagline. I'm not interested in the contributors. I'm not interested in the name. And that, I think anyone who uses REST APIs, I think this strikes a chord, because how often have you done requests to a REST API just to discard most of what you get back because you just needed a single field? And that's really wasteful. And that's one point. And you see, the result is exactly what you asked for. So the result has the very same shape of what you were asking in the query. So project tagline, a query language for APIs, great. And that's one of the main strong strength points of GraphQL. There is another one. You see, I might have asked for contributors here. And even if, so maybe in the backing database, those were two different tables, and that was requiring to look for users and then to group them into a list and then pack them into the response and then returning them along with this tagline. This is something that is only a concern for the server, the API server. Again, how often in your application did you have to query to get the list of user ID and then do a separate query to get the users themselves? So this is something that in the GraphQL philosophy is completely moved to the API side. And your application will just do a query and get the results. And that's it, exactly what you need. All of it, no more than that. That's powerful, that's great. And it has particular, let's say, cases where this idea shines. For example, mobile applications where you don't want to waste bandwidth, where you don't want to waste overhead in doing a lot of requests and stuff like that. But in general, it's a very powerful philosophy. Now, let me come to a more detailed strength and weakness analysis of GraphQL. As I said, there is something called discoverability, meaning that the GraphQL API server actively publishes its schema, making it known to anyone what you can ask this server. How you ask data from the server? You have seen a snippet of this the declarative data fetching language. So you just declare what you want and you hit the server with a request and you get back. Then there are other nice features such as schema stitching to join different GraphQL APIs transparently. You can customize responses. You've seen that I can specify a projection of the data I need. And well, something that is not so irrelevant is that the response is a standard JSON coming back over ordinary HTTP, which is a plus because that's a lot of standard stuff. Of course, GraphQL has also its cons. For example, you see, there is a single endpoint for everything in a server. There is no, like in REST, an endpoint for every kind of entity and all that. So that might make versioning a bit more cumbersome. That might make monitoring and maybe troubleshooting a bit strange. And also when you have parts of the domain that are hidden behind, let's say, an authentication and part that aren't, or security issues, that might be not so easy to implement. Another point is that compared to REST, GraphQL is still somewhat young. So the tooling is right now is growing to be mature enough. Another risk is that, as I mentioned before in the example of the users, another risk is that you might end up hiding so much the complexity of the data that a performance issue such as the N+1 problem for databases, you as a user of a GraphQL API don't even notice that there is. And in the same spirit, you might easily trigger a lot of requests behind the hood with what looks like a single GraphQL request. So there are pros and cons. One of the cons is caching. So we all know caching and invalidating the cache is one of the hardest problems in computer science. There are now heuristics to handle caching. Basically, the point is to avoid making repeated queries to the same data source to get the same piece of data, but still, I don't want to get stale data, so that there is a bit of to be stricken, right here, struck. Sorry. Sorry. There are points that GraphQL gets very clearly. One is the philosophy of BFF, backend for frontend. So GraphQL makes it very easy to depart from the logic of having a big API for all your application, and encourages you to write a small API tailored to that one application, that one client, which is the BFF philosophy. And then there are other cool things. So GraphQL supports federation, basically composition of different data sources. So behind your own single GraphQL API, there might be a REST API, a database, another server, whatever, and they are just hidden. The fact that they are heterogeneous sources is hidden behind your GraphQL server. which is cool because you as the user do not need to know that complexity. And as I mentioned, GraphQL is very handy when bandwidth matters. Okay. So now once more, this is something I mentioned already. We have AstraDB, which runs a database based on Cassandra, and it runs that on various cloud regions of various cloud providers, thanks to the magic of Kubernetes. That is all handled for you as a service. You don't have to worry, as you have just seen, creating your database. On top of that, there is this layer called Stargate that provides a data gateway, and this Stargate has several ways to access your data on the database. One of them is GraphQL. And along with the GraphQL API comes something called GraphQL Playground, which is a web UI, and you will soon use it and play with that. And I think I can move to the next hands-on, right? Where you will first, you will use the GraphQL Playground first to create the tables, then to read and write data on them. And at the end, it will also do a bulk import of the movies to have a few thousands of movies into your list, into your tables to actually have something massive enough to play with.
Thank you.
Over to you, Russ.
All right. Let me see if I can make this two small heads. I think this is good. Okay. So again, back to my GitHub repo. I will just thumb through the entire instructions so that you kind of get an idea of where we are. Because we are exactly more or less on the halfway mark, right? So we already created a AstraDB database, and we set up a token, right? So hopefully you have the token handy because we're going to use it in a moment now, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a table genre with GraphQL. Remember what Stefano talked about. We have to, kind of essentially create the schema and create the table. So we do this create table, right? And for creating schema, you use an endpoint called GraphQL schema, and it'll be evident in a little bit, okay? But when you add data or when you're doing, any kind of mutation, things like or access of the data or whatever, then you use this GraphQL endpoint. So there are two distinct endpoints: the GraphQL schema that you can see here, and the GraphQL. And we'll see all of that in a second. Okay. So if you're inserting data into the GraphQL, make sure you change the tab to now use GraphQL. And then when you go back to doing anything with the schema, then you're going to change it back to using GraphQL schema. So that's kind of the most complex step in this workshop, believe it or not, right? You're creating a movies table. Again, you do GraphQL schema, because what are you doing here? You're doing a schema, right? That's where you're setting the clustering keys, you're setting up, things like that. So just keep that in the back of your mind. There are two things. One is the GraphQL and the other is the GraphQL schema, okay? You'll start with the GraphQL schema, and then when you want to add values, you're going to use the GraphQL, okay? So retrieve values, obviously you're going to use the GraphQL endpoint and so on. You can enable paging, we're going to see all that, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to all of this can be done, just mostly for testing, because, you're probably going to do like 2 or 3 of them, right? Just to make sure everything is working. But you need to be able to bulk load them, right? You need to be able to do thousands of these. And you can do that actually, using this bulk load. Again, this is probably going to take a little bit of time, but don't be worried too much, because, it's going to come back and give you the, it's going to send you an email, to where you registered that, it was all imported and all that, okay? And after that, we're going to build the front end, which is the Gitpod IDE that, Stefano was talking about. Then we're going to fetch the front end, we're going to do the Netlify, and then, we have a final step, which is if you want to deploy the Netflix clone onto Netlify, you can do that as well. So all of this just to kind of give you a level set and kind of give you an idea, but let's start from where we were supposed to begin, which is, start using GraphQL, right? So again, make sure you get the token handy, click on your active database, click connect, click GraphQL, and click the link on your playground, okay? So pretty straightforward. All that I do is just follow the step, right? If you're following behind, or you're falling behind, just go back and start from where you think you were, and so on. So again, the easiest way, just go back to the dashboard. Okay, and you will see a number of databases here, right? So I'm particularly interested in this. So I'm going to say connect. Okay, and you should see GraphQL here as one of the options on the left, right? Or kind of middle left, however we want to see it. Okay, and then you can launch the GraphQL Playground URL. There are a number of ways of doing this. I myself prefer doing this in a new tab. Okay, so typically what I do is I right click and open the link in new tab. Okay, but if you want to click it in a new window, that's perfectly fine as well. Okay. And one of the first things that you'll immediately notice is you'll see this error. Okay, and why is this an error? The reason it's an error is because I have not provided the token yet. So here's where I will grab the token and populate this. Okay, so I'm going to grab the token. All right, and I'm going to go back to my GraphQL. Okay, and I'm going to populate this. And if I get an error again, then I did something wrong. But, thankfully for me, it comes back with the key spaces. And these are all the key spaces that exist within the database, right? So these are all the different key spaces that are there. So think about that as kind of metadata. So within key space, we kind of get this question. So I want to preempt the question right now. What is a key space? A key space is really kind of a grouping of kind of related tables, if you will. So if you want to think of different projects, then typically each project will exist in a different key space. Or if you want to think of certain functionality, all the tables associated with that functionality will be in a key space. But remember here again, I'm using the GraphQL schema tab, right? So let's go back and try to follow the instructions along. So once you've done that, that's good. You should be able to see the key spaces, right? Now in the GraphQL Playground, create a table. So if I'm creating a table, where would I do that, right? I'm going to cut this out, okay? And since I'm doing something, I think Stefano talked about shape of the table. I'm just going to cut that and paste it here, and I'm going to run this. Okay, I might have already created this, so if I get an error, not to be tremendously concerned about this, but we'll see. Okay, so it created the table and basically came back with, in fact, if you go back and look at your GitHub repo, it even kind of tells you how the response looks. So what did I do? Let me summarize because I think I may have gone a little quickly, but essentially what I did was I took this mutation, right? There are mutations and there are queries, and I think Stefano will talk about this. That's the essence of GraphQL, right? And then what I did is I basically ran that mutation by clicking this execute query. I mean, there are a number of different options here. You can have multiple queries and all that, but we'll keep it very simple for today. Okay. So we created the schema, right? So let's move on to the next step, right? Which is insert the data in the table with the GraphQL. And this is the tricky part, right? We are not doing the schema anymore. Now we have to graduate to using the GraphQL tab. Okay. So remember in the back of your mind, when you're creating or manipulating the schema, you're going to use the GraphQL schema tab. When you're not manipulating the schema, you're inserting and deleting or whatever data, then what you're doing is you're using this GraphQL tab. Okay. And the very first time you might again hit an error because again, I have not populated the token, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, populate the token. So keep the token handy as much as you can, right? So take it here, come back, populate me, right? I'm going to do that. And I'm going to try to follow the steps. Like, So now what I'm going to do is I put the Cassandra token, right? And I'm going to insert the genres, okay? So all,
Yeah. Rag, sorry, maybe I can make one thing clear. I see in the chat. You should replace the
yes,
populate me with your token, including AstraCS colon, and
good,
take care of the quotes. There have to be an opening and a
good,
closing quote in your token
great point.
in the
I kind of,
header. Otherwise, of course, the header
yeah,
is
you
a
can see
broken
here, you
syntax
should
and it
have the
will not
quote,
work.
and it starts with AstraCS here, okay? So you'll see all that. So just make sure you do that. And like I said, if you for some reason you got it wrong, you know immediately because nothing you're gonna get an error. Okay, so just go back and fix
Yeah.
that. So now I'm gonna insert the genres. Okay, so these are the different genres, and you can see here I have anime, I have crime, comedies, a whole bunch of them, right? So let's go ahead and insert that. How do I do that? Pretty straightforward, right? All that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut and paste that. Okay.
Yeah. So always pay attention because there are two tabs here in the playground. One is for schema operations, that is creating tables basically, and one is for data, so reading and writing to the
You cannot.
Netflix key space. You see those two tabs.
So
with
this is for the
yellow,
schema, which is where
icon
I
on the
created
top.
a table, right? And this is for the inserting the CRUD operations, as we refer to. Very create, read, update, delete kind of thing, right? So okay, so now we are ready to insert the genres. Same philosophy. You execute the query, and hopefully this will all work. Okay, and you can see here there's a validation error. Not quite sure what happened there.
Yeah. I think you have to change the URL of the GraphQL playground to reflect your
Thank
key
you.
space. If I see correctly.
So I
No,
missed
the
I
URL.
missed reading a step
Yeah.
here.
So
You can see here this is a very important step 4A that I glossed over in the GraphQL playground, and I did it on purpose, just to show you guys, right? Change the tab to now use GraphQL, but also edit the end of the URI to change from the system to the name of your key space, which is Netflix. Okay, so I cannot insert into system because it doesn't know about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this URL from system to Netflix. Okay, and sometimes you may have to kind of maximize the screen and all that if you can't see it. Okay, and hopefully now it should work. Okay, so there you go. So now you see that these different genres were added. Okay, and you're good to go. Okay, so you can look at that. I created and I can retrieve this. So I can go back here and I can retrieve this. Okay, and just for kicks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it here and see if I can do this.
sorry, I want to just sum up a few questions I've seen in the chat again, Brad. Sorry, I keep interrupting you, but I better hit the questions while hit the iron while it's still hot. There are questions about the word mutation. Yes, the word mutation in GraphQL is a keyword, exactly the same as query, lowercase. So query and mutation denote two different kinds of operations to GraphQL. Query is I just want data back, read only. Mutation is I want to apply some changes to the server, from the client to the server, such as writing a number, inserting a row, whatever. That being said, a mutation triggers some changes in the data in the server side, but it might, and usually does, still give back me result to the caller at once. So again, that's to economize in the number of requests.
Perfect. Yeah. So I mean, you do everything in GraphQL using mutation and queries. So here, I mean, I'm showing a little bit more sophisticated where I can execute only the get all genre. Okay. And you can see here, I got back everything. You can do that. Or the simplest way is just, get rid of everything and kind of start from scratch, right? So the other way of doing this is just get rid of everything and put in the query, get all genre, and just run it, and you'll get the same result, right? So different ways of doing this, but it's really up to you what you're comfortable with. Okay. So now I retrieved all the values. Looks good to me. I create a movies table now. Now, where do I go back? I go back to GraphQL schema, right? Because I'm creating a table, right? So remember that, that's very critical, because if you try to do it in GraphQL, it's not going to work for you, because, it's not, it really doesn't make sense in that context, right? So let me go back to schema, right? And make sure I create the table. So the reason I'm doing this, and stressing this multiple times is we've seen this in the past, right? Where attendees are struggling a little bit, but if you keep this in the back of mind and think about whether you're manipulating the schema or you're manipulating the data, it makes it very easy. So now I create the table. So movies by genre is created, and I'm good to go, right? So you'll see the movies by genre, and then I insert some movies into the table, right? So let me go ahead and insert the movies. Now where do I go? Go back to the GraphQL schema. It might seem a little complicated initially, but once you get the philosophy of it, it's pretty straightforward. And I'm going to try this a little bit differently, right? I'm going to try this, okay, and see if this works. Let's see. So what do I need to do is insert movies. And you'll see here, I have the Inception, Prometheus, Aliens, and Blade Runner, all, 4 of them inserted, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to follow the directions. Pretty straightforward, right? And all that I'm doing is taking from here, trying to understand this a little bit better, and then putting it, in my GraphQL playground, right? So now I can get movie. So without changing the tab, what I'm submitting a query where I'm getting the value of the genre, or I'm requesting the genre to be sci-fi, right? So let's see what happens here. Okay, again, grab this, and just for kicks, I'm going to do this. Make sure you're in GraphQL table, right? And I'm going to add this. Get movie by action, right? And I'm going to run that. Get movie by action. And you'll see here, I got, the different, basically I got the result of the query, okay? So again, pretty straightforward. All that you're going to do is, this next query is a little bit different, and here what I'm doing is I'm enabling this by page. Okay, so what I'm going to do is get movie action. Okay, go back to again my GraphQL playground. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of all of this because now it's kind of a little too, and I'm going to use this, right? And notice here I have a page size of 2, so I should only get 2 results back. I used to get 4 earlier, right? And then you have the genre and so on, and here I get only 2, right? And now this is useful when you're paginating, as it's referred to, where you can only, you only query as many as you can fit in a page, and then you can kind of page through it, and so on, right? So to be able to do that paging, we have this query, right? And it talks about you can do the same thing, but now you have to specify your page state, okay? So what I'll do is I'll try to specify the page state and see if that works. Okay, so go back here to the playground, grab this page state, okay, and put it in. Oh, maybe I should have done that before. It doesn't matter. I can do it here. So let's get this first. So this is paging through it, right? So I'm going to go to the playground again, and I'm going to page through and make sure I get the page state. Okay, and just so that I'm doing the right one, I'm going to page with only one, okay, and I'll make the page size as 1 so that I'll get only 1, right? So I got Prometheus and Inception. I should get the next one associated with it, right? So there you go. You got aliens, right? And then if I do the same thing again, because I'm doing one more, you should get the last one, right? Because we really only have 4, right? So let's see. Hopefully this should work. Okay. So if I run this again, the last one should show up, which is Blade Runner. Is that clear? This part. So you really have a very limited number of data sets. Instead, what I can do is I can download a data set. Okay, so I'm going to click on control click, right? And I'm gonna. Yeah, I don't want to copy image. I don't want to copy link either. But I just want to save this. Let's see. And you can see here, you have the download the data set, right? So I can go back and let me save it. Okay, so there is movies by genre.csv, right? And I saved it in my downloads directory. Okay, so let me save that there. Already exists because I've probably done this before, right? So do you want to replace it? Okay, let me replace it. No big deal, right? So there's my movies by genre CSV, right? And it's in my downloads directory. And if I go into my downloads directory, I should be able to see that. All right, let me get out of this. And okay, there it is. And let's look at this. I have quite a few here, but you should be able to see this. Movies by genre. Anyway, you'll be able to find this. Okay. Where is it? It's eluding me right now, but I'm sure I'll find it in a moment. So all right. So let's move on with this. So now I go to load data, right? So I go into my ASTRA data load importer, right? So I go back to my database, right? Your session will expire, stay logged in place. All right. Now what, again, follow the steps, which is, yes.
Sorry, Rags. Just one thing. I see someone, why is it showing me text? I think that's because you clicked download dataset. That's okay, because the dataset, the CSV is a text file. What you have to do is, if you're seeing it as text in your browser, you just save as movies by genres.csv. You just save this text file in your local computer as movies by genre.csv, and then it will later, in a second, you will use it, as Brax is explaining, for importing data into Cassandra, into AstraDB.
So let's go back here, and again, I'm comfortable just going here, right, to the dashboard, okay, and click on that particular database, okay, and you will see here load data, right? So let's load data, okay, and drag and drop a single file here, or click to select CSV, okay. So I will look for this. And let me look for CSV. That's good enough. So, where did it go? Let me see if there's movies. Downloads. Maybe it imported it as. Okay, there you go. So I have the movies by genre by CSV, right? And I open this. And then again, just follow the steps, right? So you have download the data set. So I loaded the data, load an example data set, and then what I do is click on the movies on your machine, and this that was loaded, and then you hit next. Okay. So just follow the steps along, right? So go back here and then hit next. Okay, and then again, just follow the steps along. Enter genre in the keys and clustering option. Just enter genre as the partition key, right? So I'm going to go back, enter the genre as the partition key. Okay, so enter genre, and then again, follow the steps and define the target database, right? So again, all that we are doing is we are doing to workshop and Netflix, right? So we're going to go back to ASTRA, right? And you hit next, workshops, and what target key space? Netflix, there's only one, and we're good, right? And we hit next. So data is being imported, and you'll get a notification in your email when it's done. Okay, so data is being imported. Don't worry about it. It'll take it actually takes a little bit longer than it's kind of your expectations. But don't be worried. It'll eventually come back. With some email. Hopefully, it's going to be that you completed it. Did I miss anything, Stefano, or did I get most of it?
I think you're good. Maybe we can wait a couple of minutes for the data import to work for anyone.
Yeah, and
because it takes
you'll
a
get
couple of minutes.
email something like this.
Maybe but I guess not everyone is now looking at their email. So a trick
Good point.
is to go back to GraphQL Playground and run again the query for sci-fi, if I remember correctly, with no pagination. So at some point, instead of returning 4 items, it will start returning more than 4, and you know that the import has succeeded. So if you can, Rags, this is what I usually do. I just go back to the repo, I get the sci-fi query without pagination again, so I can just get whatever is there, and at some point it will not, page size,
so
very high page size,
give you a lot more than what was there, or?
Yeah, so you're now getting 4 items, so import is still undergoing. Maybe we can use these 2 minutes to, I've seen a few questions about pagination, so it was maybe not clear for all of our attendees, so maybe it's not, doesn't hurt to repeat it. So how does pagination works? Well, you can query GraphQL to get all results, so all movies of sci-fi, but you don't need that in the client at once, and it's very heavy, and you don't need that. So why do it? Then you can add a parameter in the GraphQL query and ask, I want 4 items, and that is page size 4. Nice. The GraphQL server, when it gives me back these 4 items, the first 4, it will also give me, if I ask for that in the GraphQL structure, in the query structure, it will also give me back a string that is like a ticket. A voucher good for getting the next page of results. So I, the client, will keep it in my pocket. This is a voucher for items 5 to 8. Very good, I'm keeping it here. Then whatever happens, the human using the application clicks, I want to see more, whatever. And the client takes this voucher and gives it as page state into the next GraphQL query. So I want 4 items again, but this is my ticket, use it. It is like a recording of a position,
exactly, like
a cursor in a long list. The server side gets this ticket. It's a voucher for items 5 to 8. Very good. And it will give back to the client items 5 to 8, along with a voucher, a page state, valid for items 9 to 12, and so on. Eventually, when the human clicks more and more and more and more, and the list is over, the last page state will be null, and the client will know there's no more to show. That's how pagination works. It is like a token, a ticket ready and valid to get the next page. And it is something that the server creates and the server receives back in the next call over and over, page after page.
So there's a question from Ujjwal Agarwal, how to get email. As long as you imported it, it should automatically, you should be able to get an email. If you didn't, if you have trouble importing it, let us know and we'll be glad to help you. But I think that's a great explanation of pagination. If you try it yourself, it becomes very obvious. Like I used the page state and then I got the next one, and then I used the new page state and got the next one. So that's kind of how it works. So are we ready to jump into the presentation, Stefano? Where are we? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I see many movies
fantastic,
so
fantastic. Always good to see.
And then we can move to another couple of slides and then to the last part of the hands-on. Great. So I hope now you know everything about GraphQL. You have been playing with queries and mutations as well, in particular queries, which are what the application will need mostly. You know how they are structured, how they work, and then incidentally, these will be basically the very same queries that the client application will use to get the genres and the movies. So let's move to the Run the Application chapter. Run the application. Okay, so this is a reminder of the architecture. There is the AstraDB database, and in it there is an API layer that is Stargate, and it is just able to make the data look like specified by the GraphQL specs. So at this point, you don't need to worry about what's inside the database. You just know there is a GraphQL server able to get queries about movies and genres. Very good. So what we want is a production deployment with the application. And if you remember, according to the Jamstack, the philosophy is there is a client that is a bunch of static files, and there are some serverless functions which play the role of API, and they will be still part of the application. They will be deployed, and both these components will just float out there in the cloud in a serverless CDN powered way, and you don't have to worry about servers where stuff is running. And this is what your browser will connect to when someone visits your site. So this is our desired production setup. But let's forget Netlify for a moment, because that will be left as an optional exercise for the reader for the assignment. And let's think of replacing Netlify with a local running, or I should say local/Gitpod. Let's say something running in my machine or in a machine in the cloud. So running in a development mode anyway. So this is what we are going to achieve now. Basically, in the final production deploy, the serverless function will run in containers handled by Netlify for you, somewhere out there in their clusters. And you don't worry at all. In a development setup, there is a very nice thing. Basically, you can install a Netlify command line tool that simulates a Netlify deploy. Basically, you will have your client running locally and the serverless functions running locally as well in a separate place in your machine and reachable as if they were on Netlify. So basically, this is a development tool designed to make it look like a Netlify deploy completely, even though it is actually all running on a machine, on a computer. That might be your machine at home, but in our case today, it will be a Gitpod IDE, but that's irrelevant. It's a machine, it's a computer, and it runs a development mode so that the client that is built is available and served as in a usual React client serving dev mode. But also in the same machine, the serverless functions are kept running ready to receive requests from the client and speak to AstraDB, to the GraphQL database on the other side. So this is the essence of the dev mode. Our goal today is to guide you through to this goal, to having the dev mode up and running and the application running completely. To do that, Rags is going to show you, and it all starts with a nice button in our GitHub repository called Open in Gitpod, and that will create a Gitpod instance for you. It will clone the repo there for you. And then you will have to do some setup, basically inject the secrets and credentials and the token in particular, and then you will have to run locally meaning in Gitpod, this dev environment. So this is the goal of today. With that, again,
Perfect.
Rax, it's back to you. Run application on Gitpod in dev mode. Have a quick look, if time allows, to the serverless code and the client code. And then you see that's in italic. Deploying production to Netlify will be left as an exercise to the reader. So,
All right. I
let's
think we're
go.
doing well with respect to time, right? So as you can see here, I just wanted to make sure my anime, works, and you can see here I have the output. So essentially, my upload, completed. So you can do what I think Stefano was suggesting. If you don't get your email, or it's taken a while, or if you don't want to just go to your email and kind of look at it from the ASTRA dashboard. So the next part is open in Gitpod. This is a link, and sometimes people miss that. But basically, you click on the link, and there are a number of different ways of doing this. Okay, I can open the link in new window, which sometimes I prefer, but open link in new tab, whatever works for you. Okay, I'm going to open the link in new window, and this is what happens. Okay, just to see. It's basically saying you already have a running workspace with the same content. So you can either open an existing one or open a new workspace. Okay, I can say create a new workspace. Okay, and let it go ahead and create it. But I'm not going to wait for that because we don't have time for that, right? So I'm just gonna, essentially it's gonna come up, and you will see, like, you will have the window here, and essentially you will have a terminal window which is coming up, and it's doing a whole bunch of setup. All of this setup is not magical. It's all set up in Gitpod YAML, and you can take a look at all that. But I'm not going to worry too much about this workspace. I'm going to go to the workspace that I've already set up. Okay, so let me go to the workspace that I've already set up, which is where? Here. Okay, and I've done a whole bunch of stuff already, just to make it, make this thing go a little faster, right? But really, all that you're going to do is you're going to mostly interact in this terminal window. Okay, all of the commands you're going to you're going to put it in terminal window. One of the things that you may want to do is just kind of look at GP URL 8888. Okay, and this is the URL where this application is going to become available. And if you take this and put it in the browser, I'm not sure my application is running, so don't worry about it right now, because the port 8088 not found is fine, because we're not running the application yet. But once the application is running, you should be able to see the application. Or if you don't want to see the application running in a new tab, you can basically see it's in a preview window here as well, and all of this will be explained here in a moment. So I brought my Gitpod. This is what is Gitpod? I mean, I kind of completely glossed over that. Basically, Gitpod is Visual Studio Code, in the cloud somewhere, right, in the browser, whichever way you want to look at it. It's really cool because I don't need to do any of the setup. I can add plugins, the standard VS Code plugins, and so on. And actually, Gitpod recently announced that they're going to work with IntelliJ as well. So it's basically, think about it as a IDE in the cloud, okay? And you can pretty much do all of whatever you want. In fact, I also run another workshop that I'm actually doing it in person next week in Poland. And basically, I'm talking about Quarkus. And actually, what happens with Quarkus is you can do the debugging, in the browser, which is really, really cool. So all of that is possible by using Gitpod. I'm not gonna, overemphasize that. I probably already have, but I think what it does is it provides you with an IDE, and then you can go look at, for example, the serverless function called functions.getGenres.javascript, right? So let's go take a look at that. All right. So to be able to do that, you can kind of walk through this hierarchy, right? You can walk through this tree. Okay, so somewhere here I have functions, right? And I have getMovies.js and getGenres.js, right? And essentially, you can see here, basically what I'm doing is I'm using a process.env.astra GraphQL endpoint. Okay, and if you go back to your instructions, one of the things that you're going to be asked to set up is your GraphQL endpoint. So, the Astra GraphQL endpoint should be set up to use the GraphQL endpoint that you're going to have here, right? So this is the GraphQL endpoint. So what I did was I took the GraphQL endpoint and put it into env. But let's take this one step at a time, right? So you can do all that, but let's go take a look at the serverless functions genres.js. Okay, you can see here it's using the endpoint, and then depending on again what Stefano said, it'll provide you with the shape of the data. So you're looking for a value, label is genre, right? And you can see the response that's associated with that. So again, you are providing the AstraDB application token, which also has, we require you to set that up, because without doing any of those, nothing is going to work, right? And once you get the response, then basically what you do is you stringify it and you show it. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Likewise, you can take a look at get movies as well. And again, you're probably going to be using the same endpoint because you have to, right? And then notice here, then you have page states and so on. So you can manipulate, you can do pagination, and here you're using the values, year, title, duration, synopsis, thumbnail, and so on. And then, the page size is set to be 6. So if you want to change this to like 3 and play around with this, you can do that as well. All of this, you can, the best thing to do is kind of walk through the code a little bit and kind of, play around with this. So for example, if you don't want the synopsis, you can get rid of that. If you don't want a thumbnail, you can get rid of that. If you don't want a duration, you can get rid of that, or you can add more, depending on, what your data is and so on. So, so try that out. Okay, so I've clicked on it, and it'll take maybe a good 2 minutes, because it's going to download a lot of stuff, and then, once it's ready, then you can start playing around with this. And again, we can talk a little bit more about how we're fetching this. We can talk about the front end and the back end, and I'm sure Stefano will go through this. But the best way to do this is kind of walk through the code yourself and kind of play around with it. Like for example, change the page size and so on, and see the cause-effect relationship, right? So now let me get the application up and running. So again, to do that, what do? I just go ahead and follow the steps, right? I've looked at the serverless functions briefly, right? And this shows how so let's look at source app.js, right? So let's look at source app.js, and again, here basically what it's doing is it's getting the get genres that we just saw, and then it does based on genre.value. So essentially what you can do is you can kind of take a look at this code and again kind of play around with this. It applies the CSS app.cs, and you can see how this looks. Again, you can kind of play around with this and see what happens here, right? If you change, for example, the background color, make it more personalized, all of those, you can do that as well. Okay. Okay. So now that we have looked at the code a little bit, right? Let's install the Netlify CLI. Okay. So again, follow the steps. Okay. Let's go ahead and install it. Go back to my, where was my, right here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and install this. Okay, this is probably going to take a little bit of time. And you'll see, if you want to use Netlify, this would be useful. So what is Netlify? To summarize very briefly, what Netlify does is it's able to deploy your version of the application with all the CI/CD and all that built in. It's a very sophisticated platform, and essentially, again, works very well with the Jamstack. And the idea is that it will create your own version, so that if you do any customizations, any manipulations, and all that, you can deploy it yourself. It's great platform for testing and then eventually doing the deployment as well. Okay, but let's go back, because one of the things that we need to do here is you have to create the AstraDB application token. Remember we used that in the GraphQL playground. You have to put that in here as well. Okay, and I'm going to briefly show that to you because I've already done that. Okay, the easiest way to do it is there are a couple of suggestions to do this. You can either do the touch.env or you can do the gpopen.env. I personally prefer doing this, which is basically copy. Okay, you can copy .env.sample, and you can see here we have provided a sample file for you. Okay.
Is there
Yeah,
an
yeah, there
ENV
is.
sample
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
repo?
yeah.
I didn't remember. Ah,
Right,
great.
and
I didn't
this is
remember
exactly
that.
what I did. I just copied the env sample into .env and then manipulated
Well
it.
done.
Okay, so I'm not going to show all that because it's pretty straightforward. But eventually, if you look at this env, it should have the token starting with Astra CS blah blah blah, right? And also the GraphQL endpoint. So where did I get the GraphQL endpoint? Again, go back to the playground and grab this, right? So you can see here, I have the GraphQL endpoint. So I'm going to go back and show you what I did, right? Grep endpoint and .env. Okay, so that's exactly what I have here, right? This is what I grabbed from here. So each of these is personalized for you, for your GraphQL endpoint. So you're going to use that GraphQL endpoint. Now that I've done both of this, right, I am pretty much ready to install all the packages, right? So I'm going to install the package. So again, just follow the instructions, right? So there are a couple of things you can do as well. If you want, you can bring up another bash and you can kind of look at that. But, one is good as well. Up to you, really. You can play around with this. But here, what I'm going to do is let me see if I can do an npm install. Okay, so what is this doing? This is basically installing the application, right? And did I get? Oh, this doesn't look good.
There you are.
It
Yeah,
finished?
it
Okay.
finished. Should be good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it should be
I
good.
think I was expecting something different. Yeah, that was my mistake. Okay. So once you have installed all the packages, now you can run the application. This is going to run in the Gitpod preview pane. Okay, and you will see this in a second when I'm going to run it. Okay, so I'm going to clear this. I'm going to see if I can. Okay, so now I'm going to run this Netlify dev, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, this is development mode as we stressed
Exactly.
earlier.
And you can see here, it's already starting to use the functions get genres, get movies, and so on. It's
Yeah.
injected the application token, it injected the GraphQL endpoint. So it kind of gives you a little bit of information on what it's doing. And all that you need to do is try HTTP localhost 8888. But this localhost is with respect to Gitpod, right? So what I have to do is I have to find the URL. Remember I did that before, but I'm going to do it again just for those who may have missed this. Okay, you can say 8888. And you can see here that the Netflix preview pane already came up, right? But if I don't want to do this in the preview pane, I can click on this and I can bring that up. Okay? So let me do that again.
Yeah.
I am a man of many tabs.
So
Okay, and you'll see here that I I have my application up and running in GitHub.
so I
Mission
would say
accomplished, I would
mission
say.
accomplished, and your Netflix
Exactly.
clone is up and running. And you guess what? The data is not mocked. It's coming from AstraDB through the Netlify functions and the
Exactly.
GraphQL
Yeah.
API. So the full stack is working as we promised. Would you care to show infinite scroll at work? Because that's interesting. You see, now Rags is seeing only 5 or 6 genres, but if you mouse over the end of the bottom of the window, more genres should be loaded. So if you scroll down and mouse over, yeah, see, classic comedies, crime, cult. You set it to 4 maybe, or maybe it was set to 4. So you see even more, and every time you mouse over the end of the bottom of the window, more genres will be loaded, and that's because what is infinite scroll is a form of pagination that will just keep memory of the last page state and use it to get the next batch of genres over and over, progressively
Exactly.
filling the client window, right?
Yeah, and we did
It's working.
pagination. Pretty much all of those. The only thing we haven't done yet is
Yeah.
deploy to Netlify. But maybe what we should do is take a pause and see if everybody is able to run GitPod and kind of get to this point.
Yeah, yeah. While we wait for everyone to get to this point, maybe you can scroll a bit down and show in genre pagination as well. So anywhere there are many movies like sci-fi, you see this little arrow on the right. That if you click on the arrow on the right, a batch of new movies should be loaded, replacing the previous ones. That's because there are hundreds and hundreds per genre. So maybe Rags, could you click on the little white? Yeah, that's maybe
Yes,
only
that
2
may be
things.
only
I
two
don't
things.
know. No, still stick to sci-fi and click to sci-fi, which has more, or horror, or whatever.
All right. What about action? Action has only 4.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
either.
remember, but
Okay, let's
children
just
is
say.
sure. Children is sure. Okay, fantasy here. Whatever is, click on the little white arrow. Yes, that should work. If you click on that,
Oh, sorry.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Oh, what
Sorry
is
about that.
happening? Sorry.
Let me try again.
Okay.
Let me try in the browser. Browser itself. Let's
Okay.
see. So
Maybe. Okay, maybe there are some glitches. Yeah, see, someone in the chat complains they do not see the play controls. Someone else does not see the movies. So if you don't see the play controls, maybe there might be something messed up, I think, in your styles, because actually this is a clone of the only of the starting page of Netflix. So it's not you will not see the movies themselves. You just see, the trailers, which are also faked and rotated. And those of you who are not seeing the movies, then maybe I would say the import data step has not worked, or maybe you didn't run
okay.
it. You might want to run it again, because see, if you see the genres, then your API is actually working and your client is reaching the API to get the genres. So something in the database has been written,
Yeah.
and your application
I
works
think I
to
may
reach
know an
that.
answer for that. I probably did the import once before, and maybe the second import kind of messed it up. But I can try that out.
I see. Okay. But at least the sci-fi, you should see 4 movies, because those were inserted in the playground. So even if the CSV,
Right.
for some reason you skipped that step, you should see at least
And I
4
do, right?
sci-fi movies. So maybe, well, you can go back, you can try debugging. You go back to the playground and run the queries to get the movies, and maybe try changing the genre and see if the data is there on the database or not, and then you decide whether to debug data insertion or API
Actually, you know what I'm going to do?
serverless
I'm going to
functions.
create a new. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, I could do that. So let me go check and see how many genres are there. Right? Yeah.
But we know, Raxi, we know you see all genres because
Correct.
your client is showing them. That's no
So the import
question.
did
There's
work,
no
right?
question there.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
see a lot of film, a
Yeah.
lot of movies in your application. So yes, or because your database was fresh new, so
Exactly.
for sure your import did work.
So
But okay, so but
did it
maybe
get the genre?
there are questions about the env file. So I think the best thing at this point for the env file is to go to the GitHub repo and
Yeah.
look at the instructions there. You have to create a .env file and populate it with the secrets, so token and connection string for the GraphQL server.
And there are a lot more genres,
Yeah.
so it's all
Okay,
good,
that
looking
should be
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be good. Yeah.
So
Yeah, Saurabh, thank you. That's it exactly. Okay.
Rama is on me too.
Okay. So okay. You know, this is live. It's always the case that something goes awry, then we have to rush, and no problem. So that's why there is the GitHub repository with all instructions, and we will be more than happy to help you along the way anytime. So please reach us on Discord if you get stuck even
Yeah.
later. There's no need to do it now. What we can do now is
Bold enough
maybe
Bold enough to try
wrap up
Netlify?
because we have.
Yeah.
I don't think there is time to do that. I will just describe conceptually how Netlify works and then leave it as an exercise. And of course, we are there on
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
Discord
I
to
think
help you.
I think we kind of
That's
expected
Simon.
this because we're going to be running out of time. But yeah. So maybe what we can do is talk about Netlify and back to you, Stefano.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so let me first show something about this code. Maybe I want to just very quickly. So what you have seen with Rugs
Hold on one
is
sec.
that there is in the repo.
Yep.
Okay, I'm good. In the repo, there is a functions directory, and that contains just ordinary vanilla node code. And this will be what Netlify takes and moves over to be run as a serverless function. And also Netlify Dev does a simulated version of the same. You have seen that there is a GraphQL query here, which is just what you would run in the playground, nothing less, nothing more. And it needs some secrets, so the endpoint and maybe, of course, the token as well. But then the cool thing is that this function is what the client reaches to get, in this case, the genres. And this function, in turn, will use this query and do a simple, ordinary HTTP request, a post in particular, and in the body there is the query, the GraphQL query. This is also something you have seen with Rugs, but I want to stress that because it's very important. So the serverless functions are available at a standard address built basically from the file name for the client. But in turn, they will just run node code. And in particular, here we are using the ordinary fetch. Of course, there are libraries, client libraries that make it easier to interface with GraphQL API. Why not? But this is, let's say, a bare bones example. You don't need any fancy library. You just do an HTTP request and you get the results back. And the other get movies is no different. Now, the other thing I wanted to quickly show is these. This is the main app.js for the React client application. There are some tricks here, which is what is needed to get pagination working. You see, there are some states that are the page that's being requested, the page that we are at, and also there is a flag saying, are we in the process of requesting pages right now, requesting more genres right now or not? And these all have a particular interplay you can see here. There is a function called fetch data, and these basically, this is where the client reaches out to the serverless function at a standard address. You see here, it's a standard address here. This is where the client reaches out the serverless function you just saw. It gets the result and it uses that result to update its own knowledge of the genres, which in turn, in the React way, goes to trigger updates to the actual page DOM, virtual DOM. So this is just, and if you are curious, you can have a closer look and find out that there is a non-entirely trivial interplay between requested page, page state, and is fetching. Because, for example, at some point we will reach the bottom and we have to make sure we are not issuing any more moot requests. And there are a few other quirks. Now, that was just to pique your interest. We will not spend time on other things of the client because they are not so related with GraphQL. And with that, I just want to, okay, so here we were here in the slides and now a final slide. This might be a bit scary to look at, but this is what production deploy with Netlify looks like. And it's really not much different from what you just did, because you see, this is what you did. And you see here, we wrote our application, as in, this is our DataStax devs Git clone running for you. But here it will be your application. Why? Because there is yet another nice button in the Gitpod, in the GitHub repository. And this is this green button, deploy to Netlify. And it is actually something magic, I think. So if you click on this button, not now, but as to complete the homework, if you click on deploy to Netlify, a few things will happen. First, the repository will be copied to your GitHub. And it's very important that you, from that point, you will work in that one, in your copy. I think technically it's not even a fork. It's really just an independent copy of the same repository, but that's irrelevant.
In effect, it's like a fork. Yeah.
It is like a fork, but it is not. I don't think it's a fork in the GitHub sense. GitHub does not know to link the two.
Yeah.
As far as I remember.
Very
but
nuanced.
Really
yeah.
Not even important for us. Yeah. So what's important is that behind the scenes, your GitHub repository with the Netflix application will be automatically pushed to Netlify. What does it mean? A site will be created in Netlify, and a site is a combination of a CDN to serve static part of the Jamstack and serverless functions ready to be run, to be deployed. Actually, even a build step will be triggered and automatically executed and deployed for you, all for you, in just with one click. But of course, this will not work yet. Why? Because Netlify has no knowledge of your .env, has no knowledge of your secrets. So that's why from your GitHub repository, you will still have to click the Open in Gitpod button. You will have your own development environment, but this time it will be based on your own GitHub. You will inject your .env functions. You will see, maybe you will check it's running in dev mode, but it is your application. Actually, very much the same as you saw, but it is from your repo. And then there are commands offered by the Netlify command line interface that will deploy again. So you will build and deploy. And in particular, you will also inject your environment variables over to Netlify so that the production version of your application will have everything ready. And as you see, there is a rather happy face here. It will be finally able to speak to GraphQL in AstraDB. Yeah, that's it. So that sounds complicated, but if you look at the instructions in our repo, it will be just a series of steps. And with the help of this diagram, I think it will be.
So to summarize, what we did was we created the database. We basically bulk loaded the data, right? And then we accessed the same data from Gitpod. And then deployed the application to Netlify. That's kind of how, and the Netlify deployment is going to be based on your own repository, your own token, your own Astra service, and so on. And that's kind of how you can implement CI/CD and all that going forward, right? So does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So Well, I would declare this victory because we saw the application running, and I hope many of our attendees also did. So let's, I see it says 10 vulnerabilities. Now, welcome to Node, I would say. So Node
Quite a bit.
dependencies are admittedly forest mess, and there are all sorts of vulnerabilities being detected all the time, and keeping up with the versioning and compatibilities between versions is like hell. So I would say 10 vulnerabilities is nothing compared to what you usually see in very stable, very robust Node production
I like
systems.
Emmanuel's
So don't care
message.
too
Don't
much.
worry about it. Well, I mean, I would keep an eye on it because vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities, but
Yeah.
at least in development phase, it's probably okay, to get started on it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a,
And
it's a moving target, right? You update the version, then you'll find new vulnerabilities. So that's something that enterprises are struggling to keep up with. But
yeah.
I think from development perspective, you can, like what he said, can just ignore it for now.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a problem with
exactly.
all languages almost. I mean, vulnerabilities get found out all the time, but Node is only maybe just even more than Python. So the pace of new version and just the sheer amount of packages out there makes for a very dynamic, and that's a gentle word I'm using, a very messy environment. So vulnerabilities all the time, and it's, industry-wise, it's not a trivial thing to keep things under control. Anyway, we are approaching the end of our journey, and it's 4 minutes to the end of our allotted time. We will probably go a few minutes later, because what's next to close, to wrap up? First, let's have our cool, nice quiz. And now I hope you were still connected to Menti, because I'm going to switch over to the quiz. And this time it's the real quiz.
I have the quiz music playing. If it's too loud, please let me know.
Very good. Let's give our friends 1 or 2 minutes to make sure they connect, and I finish an answer.
Yeah, it's always good to know that works as expected. so I know we have a few.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
to see.
yeah,
There
go
are
wrong.
so many links that can
but again, don't if you didn't manage to complete it, no worries. And if you see some errors, submit some pull requests. We'd be happy to kind of look at it. Okay.
I see some appreciation of what we did. So I would say the best way to show you liked our show is to like and subscribe to our channel. So please go ahead. I want to see the number grow up now, while we wait for people to get on board of the quiz. And shall I remind you, maybe it's the best time to remind you that the winners of the quiz will win some swag. And so some nice prizes that will be shipped to.
And again, please don't put
please.
any answer in the chat. It's not going to help you. So keep an eye on Menti.
Yes, and keep an eye on your browser. And I think it's time to go. Okay, so there are a few questions, 6 questions. So please assemble in front of the questions as you are doing now, and we can start. So it's a fast answer, fast to get more points. Question number 1. What is AstraDB? I hope at this point it is clear. It is a local in-memory database, or it is maybe a database as a service based on Apache Cassandra, or it is
like
a gateway to the stars.
ASTRA, stars, yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I agree.
All right, let's see.
And
Wow.
great. So it is the database as a service based on Apache Cassandra. Well done. It is not in memory, and it is not local. So I see someone called Barefoot Cassandra seems to be
Not Cassandra. You're
at the
you're
top
reading
position. Sorry, I'm reading. I swear I read Barefoot Cassandra. Sorry, that would have been even nicer.
Yeah, Barefoot Cassandra.
Okay.
Barefoot Cassandra seems.
Second question.
Yeah, better handle, but contest is cool.
Yeah. So in the meantime, Belen, you will give instruction for the homework. Don't worry. Question number 2. So answer fast. In GraphQL, which operations
Edit the
we
data.
use to edit data? So to change data. Query, edit, mutation, writes, or pencil. We remarked on this point. So there is a keyword, GraphQL keyword, denoting operations that change
And
data
the
on the
answer
server
is?
side. And the answer is, wow, looks like you did a
nice.
great
Yeah.
job, Rax. Mutation.
Almost
Everyone
yeah.
made it. Very good. Great.
Very
Let's
cool. Let's
move
see
on
how the
then. Let's
leaderboard
see.
is shaken up. Is Barefoot Contessa still in front?
I see
Contessa.
Barefoot Cassandra still.
Oh, you're going to
leading.
call it Cassandra.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I'll
That's fine.
keep saying Cassandra. I like this.
BC.
And Kevin and Arham.
Yeah, it could be
everyone
anybody,
else is very close, so do not take anything
There
for
are still,
granted.
4 questions left? 3, 4, 5, 6.
And?
So plenty of time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
answer fast and be correct. What can't you do with GraphQL? There is something you can't do. Let's see. Auto discoverability, or schemaless, or federation, or
Response
response customization. I think we took care of mentioning
Wow,
all
those are
these
tough ones.
points. So the answer should be found in the past 2 hours in the workshop. And let's see if we did a great
You're
job.
setting yourself up.
What you can't do,
Yes.
too bad.
Schemaless.
What you can't do is schemaless. I remember I said everything in GraphQL requires a schema to be there to define objects. Federation, that is joining different data sources basically in a particular way, is something that you absolutely can't do with GraphQL. And let's see if this shakes the leaderboard. Seems like many of you still maintain their position, and Barefoot Cassandra
Nice.
is still leading. Zachary and
I think a little bit of
second and
I think a
third.
little bit of
Great.
shake up
Well
in
done.
the bottom, but the top looks pretty good. Yeah.
But
Still
most of the,
3 more questions.
And
so,
let's
yes.
see.
Anything
3
could happen.
questions to go. Let's see. Remember to answer fast. Look at your phone. And what are the terms used for paging? Are they paging size and paging cursor, page size and page state, or page number, or book title and bookmark? Now, this is something we both remarked, Rax and I, so I hope that is something you remember. You've seen that in the code. So let's see. And that's it. Great. Page size and page state, correct. So how many items and what is the previous voucher to claim the next page full? Very good. Let's see. Everyone got it right, and Barefoot Cassandra is still leading and also fastest. Zachary, Thomas, Mervin, yeah, everyone is very close. So anything can happen still. Let's see.
2 more left.
Question number 5. Yes. And what is Netlify? It is a platform to build and deploy web apps. It is a Java application server. It is a code review tooling, or it is a software to calculate your tax rate. By the way, I don't know anywhere else, but here in Italy, it is the season of paying the taxes. So everyone is crazy about that, and it's a mess. And it is a platform to build and deploy web apps. Very good.
Yeah, or
we did a great
we
job
had a
this
very easy
time,
question, I
right.
guess. But in any case, let's see if Barefoot Cassandra is still maintaining the lead.
Barefoot Cassandra is still winning, but Zachary jumps to 4th position.
Wow,
Thomas
they
and
were quick.
Mervin jump 1 up. Yeah, they were quick indeed. And then this is the last question.
Yes,
all the
let's go
marks.
for it.
So concentrate and answer fast and correct.
Flex your fingers.
What is the main benefit of using serverless functions? I only need the function to retrieve my data. No backend infrastructure needed, or no benefit. Serverless functions are only for local development.
6. I think serverless functions are good for local deployment, right? No.
And no
Needed.
backend infrastructure
Oh.
needed. That's correct. Yes. So of course there is a server, there is an infrastructure, but you don't have to worry, and it will be flexibly managed for you. Okay, so
Final
final leaderboard,
leaderboard.
and looks like
It was close. Barefoot Cassandra is
Barefoot
winning.
Cassandra wins.
One rather.
I see in the YouTube chat that Barefoot Cassandra might be a good old acquaintance of us. Is that you? Haha. Congratulations anyway, whoever you are. Now it's important, I will not yet close Menti, because if you are in the first, second, and third position, please take a screenshot of your Menti, because if I manage to, yes, take a screenshot of your Menti and get ready to send this by email to claim your prize to this address. It is also in the YouTube chat, so please take note. Of course, send a screenshot of your winning screen, and you will be awarded a nice DataStax swag. Okay. So congratulations for first, second, and third, and to everyone else just for participating, to staying with us at least 2 hours. I hope you've been learning a lot. And homework. Now, before we part, homework is the following. You are required to add your own movie to the database. Your own movie, a movie you like, whatever. You just add a new movie to the database, and you show us with a screenshot, you show us your Netflix clone running and showing
you're
your
welcome
new
to,
movie. And then you just...
You're welcome to add a new genre
Sorry.
also if you want, you know, so up to you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can invent a genre such as a Netflix or GraphQL based
Or
movies,
data, or
whatever.
data
and then
stacks
you-
workshops
whatever.
and add
So-
all our YouTube in there.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So then there is a submission form in the GitHub repo. You submit and you give us a few days to review and to grade, and you will be receiving
I know.
your
Lot
badge
of
to
people
add
are
to your
concerned about
collection.
deadlines. We are not very rigid in terms of deadlines.
Yeah. Try to stay in the week
If
in
you
1
if you
week
can,
from
yeah.
now. but
And given that Stefano is going to be
we are
looking
all,
at taxes,
we are all busy
and I'm going to be
stuff.
traveling, so we can take a little
Yeah.
bit longer. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, you are all busy with many things, so we are not like, you know, bad guys. Optionally, and this is very much suggested, deploy to Netlify. This is not required for the homework, but please go the extra mile and deploy to Netlify, because that's a cool thing and it's a learning experience. And of course, if you are interested into the client part, how it is made, please have a look at the video by Anya Kubo, who is very good at explaining how actually she builds the application from scratch. So again, reach us on Discord for anything. If you get stuck, if you are interested, if you have questions, if you want to shout at us, your frustration, whatever, reach us on Discord. And speaking of that, this is our Discord server. We have several channels, and we are happy to engage with you in every topic, from development to databases, Cassandra, Netlify, Netflix, whatever. Okay. So now, before closing, there's a very important point. Today, we have been playing with GraphQL in a sort of a hands-on way, and there will be more hands-on, but even more theory to learn how GraphQL works in the workshop in 2 weeks from now. So please make sure you'll join us for this introduction to GraphQL workshop on the 29th. So maybe I can put into the YouTube chat the link to workshops.
Yeah, and for those of you who are new, you know, we do run a lot of workshops, typically on Wednesday. So you know, kind of look for that space, and you know, there are so many variety of workshops, anywhere from microservices, you know, to intro to NoSQL, to data modeling, you know, all kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah,
machine learning
as
about
well.
that. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things.
And we try
A
to
lot of
up-level
things.
everybody's skill, including
Actually-
mine. You know, when I'm creating this workshop, I learn a lot as well.
Yeah.
So,
Everyone's.
yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think that's more or less all there is to say. There was something else to mention, maybe? Don't remember. Yes, there are a few questions about the certificate, which is more properly a badge. You find all instructions in the GitHub repository itself. Let me add a link in the YouTube chat, but it's the usual link to the GitHub repo, which contains all instructions, these slides, a link to this video, homework instructions and screenshots and everything. So it should be a self-service kind of thing.
I think Sajid
Okay, that being
Sajid is
said,
asking how do I
please-
share my repo link? Just put it in the form. I think you should be able to do that.
Yeah, there is a special a particular part in the homework submission form where you can share a link. That's supposed to be your Netlify production site. But if you want to share your repo, why not? It's probably going to be very similar to ours. But if you improve the application, we accept pull requests. So keep that into account. Keep that in mind. And that being said, we would like to subscribe because I think we run very cool workshops, and you are welcome to
And I think
join us next time.
before
So
before
with
we
that,
close, I'm
I
sorry.
think-
I know we are already late, and
Yeah.
I don't want to take too much of your time.
ahead.
But I think Syntonic, I don't know if I'm saying it right, noticed a badge for Spring. Absolutely, we have workshops on just about everything. So what you want to do is just kind
Absolutely.
of go back and look at the GitHub link.
Okay, so
and,
maybe I can.
you will find a whole variety. In fact, we ran like a boot camp in beginning of the year, which walks through all of the different drivers and so on. It was based on Spring, and then we had another Better Reads application, which is a clone of Goodreads. So all kinds of a variety of different workshops. The only thing is, you may not be able to get a badge because I don't think we are running it, in the near future. But I'm sure it'll be happening, and it'll be probably around the corner.
Yeah, and I think this list of badges is not even the final one. We have a few more that we haven't added yet to this slide. Anyway, I go back to my final slide, which is simply a slide saying thank you for attending and for the participation. So thank you. And I think see you next time.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Ciao.
And as always, don't forget to click that subscribe button and ring that bell to get notifications for all of our future upcoming.
Imagine a being gifted with powers from the goddess of Cassandra, who grew those powers until she could multiply at will, move with limitless speed, and unmask hidden knowledge. With those powers, she was able to fully understand the connectedness of the world. What she saw was a world in need of understanding. From that day forward, she sought to bestow her powers on all who came into contact with her, empowering them to achieve wondrous feats.